What if Cleopatra wasn't just a queen from another country, but had a stronger link to Egypt than we thought? Recent DNA tests have revealed shocking facts about her real family tree. Are you ready to find out who Cleopatra really was? Keep watching to find out the truth that changes everything. The DNA breakthrough. Think about a queen who for more than 2,000 years has stood for power, mystery, and seduction. Cleopatra has long been thought of as Egypt's last Macedonian queen, with Greek roots that shaped her rule. What if everything we thought we knew about where she came from was wrong? It's possible that her story had more to do with the land she ruled than just her Greek blood. With the help of DNA analysis, scientists have solved the puzzle of Cleopatra's real family tree and found a shocking truth that turns history on its head. The search for Cleopatra's family history began in a lab not far from Egypt's Golden Sands. Historians and researchers have been arguing for years about where she came from. The most popular theory is that she was completely Macedonian Greek and a descendant of Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander the Great's generals. But in the last few years, scientists have used cutting-edge tools to actually dig deeper into the past. Researchers took genetic material from old remains like bones and teeth and started the long, difficult process of decoding Cleopatra's DNA. That which they did was called next-generation sequencing. This method is strong enough to put together, like a puzzle, tiny pieces of old DNA. The results shocked everyone. Cleopatra's DNA was not just Greek as was once thought. It was much more complicated than that. The DNA markers they found showed that she had two different sides to her heritage: Greek Macedonian ancestry from her father's side, and strong Egyptian and North African ancestry from her mother's side. It was clear from this point on that Cleopatra was more than just Greek royal blood. They looked at mitochondrial DNA, which is only passed down through the mother, to really understand where she came from. We know who Cleopatra's mother was because of mitochondrial DNA. It also connects her to people who lived along the Nile Valley and to groups in East Africa. This is a big deal because it proves Cleopatra wasn't just a foreign queen in Egypt. People had long thought that her rule was the result of outsiders coming in and taking over the land, but she had a direct connection to it. Not only was this an interesting fact, but it also showed that Cleopatra's family tree went back to the people who built Egypt's beautiful tombs. These African roots not only change how we think about Cleopatra's family tree, but they also question centuries of false information. For a long time, Cleopatra was seen as different from other people. In order to control her story, the Romans made her out to be a seductress and a stranger who swayed their leaders and brought them down. But DNA proof shows that Cleopatra was a lot more than these Roman stories make her out to be. The Nile Valley is linked to her through her mother, showing that she was a queen who was as much a part of Egypt as the people she ruled. This isn't just a big step forward in science, it changes what Cleopatra is. This finding has very important effects. The results show that Cleopatra's ties to Egypt were more than just a political one. They were based on a real biological connection to the land. In the traditional history of her rule, it is often forgotten that she was Egyptian by birth. Cleopatra was thought to be the last member of a foreign dynasty for hundreds of years, but we now know she had a lot more to do with her own country than we thought. Her Greek heritage is still a part of her story, but it's not the only thing that makes her who she is now. Cleopatra was a queen who came from a lot of different countries. She was Macedonian, Egyptian, and from Africa itself. We need to rethink everything we know about Cleopatra's impact now that we know more about her family tree. Her story has always been about power, love, and sorrow. Now it's also about who she is, a person whose identity is formed by a mix of different cultures and bloodlines. DNA tests have shown that Cleopatra's family tree is more complicated than anyone thought. The queen who ruled Egypt was not just a conqueror from another country. She was also strongly connected to the land she ruled over and brought with her the stories of both ancient Greece and Egypt. Let's look more closely at how Cleopatra's maternal line gives us even more information about her Egyptian background. These details could change how we think about the very roots of Egypt's last pharaoh. The Egyptian connection. When scientists first started to decode Cleopatra's DNA, the most shocking information came from mitochondrial DNA, which was a surprise. Since this kind of DNA can only be passed down through the mother, it is great for finding out who Cleopatra's mother was. Because mitochondrial DNA doesn't mix with the father's DNA like other types of DNA do, it can show a straight line of ancestry. This mother's line that had never been broken was the key for Cleopatra to find her real link to Egypt. It's not just family trees that mitochondrial DNA helps us figure out our history. It also links us to the people, places, and cultures that made us who we are. This DNA link went back to the Nile Valley for Cleopatra, who ruled that area for most of her life. The findings showed that Cleopatra's mother, and maybe even other mothers before her, were probably native Egyptians. The old idea that Cleopatra was a stranger with only Greek blood in her veins is called into question by this scientific finding. The story instead shows a woman whose family had a long history with the land she ruled. The specific maternal haplogroup found in Cleopatra's DNA was a genetic marker that was popular among Egyptians in the past. The people who live in the Nile Delta and the Memphis area belong to this group. It says that Cleopatra was related to both the famous Greek Ptolemaic dynasty and Egypt's royal and priestly families. It's possible that the mitochondrial DNA markers can be traced back to a priestess family from Memphis or the Delta, which used to be the religious and cultural center of Egypt. This discovery is very important because it suggests that Cleopatra's mother may not have been a normal Greek princess, but rather from a very old Egyptian family with a lot of power and influence in Egypt's government. This finding is more than just DNA and family trees. It reveals a secret part of Cleopatra's personality that was shaped by both her Macedonian ancestors and her strong ties to Egypt and its people. A part of Cleopatra's character that had been forgotten for a long time was that she was Egyptian by blood. Even though she was a ruler from another country, her family tree wasn't just political, it was biological. Roman propaganda for hundreds of years tried to make Cleopatra look like an outsider, a foreign queen who used power struggles in Rome to get what she wanted. This DNA proof shows that this was not true. In fact, she was a lot more complicated than that. She was a mix of Macedonian and Egyptian heritage with roots in both Greek and native Egyptian families. As more people learn about Cleopatra's Egyptian roots, it becomes clear that she is more legitimate as a ruler. Cleopatra's ties to Egypt were no longer just for political reasons or to make strategic alliances. They were a real link to the place and people she ruled. She was not just a foreigner from Macedonia trying to hold on to power. She was an Egyptian queen with blood from both the Ptolemaic dynasty and the ancient Nile society. This new information about Cleopatra's mother's side of the family changes how we think about her rule because it shows how much she cared about Egypt's survival and strength, both as a country and as the home of her relatives. This new way of looking at Cleopatra changes how we think about her place in Egyptian history. No longer is it enough to see her as a politician who smartly got through the tough parts of Roman politics. Instead, she becomes a symbol of Egypt, a queen whose identity was based on the spiritual and cultural history of the country she ruled. Cleopatra was not only a ruler by title, but also by inheritance. Her mother's family was part of the elite Egyptian society, which supports the idea that she was a queen whose claim to the throne was both legally and biologically valid. So what does the fact that we now know Cleopatra came from Egypt mean for how people see her now? It makes us question everything we thought we knew about who she was, what she left behind, and how she ruled. People used to think of the queen as foreign because she had Greek blood, but now we see her as a real Egyptian ruler who had a strong connection to the land and led its people with true authority. Finding out about Cleopatra's genes doesn't just change her story, it gives her back the sincerity and honor that history had tried to take away. How will these new discoveries change the way we think about past rulers? We'll talk about how Cleopatra's Greek and Egyptian roots not only affected who she was, but also how they shaped her legacy as a queen who defied the odds and became one of history's most famous people. The Macedonian Greek heritage. The Ptolemaic line, which began with Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander the Great's generals, has always been a big part of Cleopatra's life. Alexander's kingdom broke up after he died, and Ptolemy took over Egypt. In 305 BCE, he started the Ptolemaic dynasty. The Ptolemies ruled Egypt for almost 300 years after that, but the Ptolemies were still Macedonian Greeks, even though they were in charge of one of the world's oldest societies. They spoke Greek, did things the way the Greeks did, and didn't see themselves as Egyptians but as Alexander's descendants. The Ptolemies were different from every other kingdom in history in how they ran Egypt. Even though they were Macedonian by birth, they learned to live like Egyptians because they knew that if they wanted to run Egypt well, they had to adopt Egyptian religion, culture, and language. Their long rule depended on this mix of Greek and Egyptian ideas, but it didn't take away their Greek character. The Ptolemies, who included Cleopatra's ancestors, stuck to Greek ruling customs, which made them feel out of place in the land they ruled. When she was born in 69 BCE, Cleopatra came from a family with roots in both Macedonian conquerors and Egypt's old ruling class. Over time, the Ptolemaic dynasty became more like the Egyptians. They used Egyptian faith, language, and rituals in their government. They were different from the Egyptians they ruled, though. They never really became part of Egyptian society. Instead, they held on to their Greek background as proof that they were real. As the last Ptolemaic ruler, Cleopatra had to balance the needs of her Greek background with the needs of her Egyptian subjects, just like her ancestors had to do. She became Egyptian, learned the language, played Egyptian religious parts, and even said she was the new Isis, an Egyptian goddess. This dual character helped her get support from her people, but it also made her foreign roots stand out. One of the best things about Cleopatra's politics was that she could combine her Greek and Egyptian identities. She wasn't just a Greek princess pretending to be an Egyptian queen. She was also a master of cultural diplomacy who used her Greek background to connect with both her Greek allies and the Egyptian people. Because her family was from Macedonia, she was interested in Greek intellectualism. At the same time, she showed a lot of love for Egypt's ancient religion and culture. This made it possible for her to live in two different worlds. Her Greek background made her important to the elites of Macedonia and Rome, while her Egyptian background made her a symbol of power and dignity to the Egyptian people. It wasn't always easy to find this balance between the two societies, though. As long as Cleopatra lived, her Greek background would tell her that she was different from the people she ruled. When we look at things from the Roman point of view, this is especially true. Because the Romans were interested in Egypt, they often used the fact that Cleopatra was Greek to make her seem like a foreign threat. To them, Cleopatra was not a master of Egypt, but rather the most recent in a long line of foreigners who had taken over Egypt. Roman propaganda liked this story because it showed Cleopatra as a sly seductress who used her beauty to gain power and control over Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. In this story, Cleopatra's Greek background was a big part of what made her foreign. This was done to show that her power wasn't just Egyptian and that she was a threat to Roman rule. The Romans used this idea about Cleopatra to explain what they did in Egypt. They could make her look like an outsider, a dangerous queen who didn't really fit in Egypt by focusing on her Greek roots. Because of this, her relationships with Caesar and Antony were seen as manipulative, which made it easier for the Romans to weaken her control and power. By doing this, they removed her real heritage, her Egyptian roots, and made her nothing more than a political tool to keep Rome in power. The real Cleopatra, on the other hand, was not at all like this Roman picture. Even though it's not the only part of her story, her Greek background has been given the most attention in history. Even though her family was from Macedonia, it was her ability to be proud of both her Greek and Egyptian identities that made her a truly great leader. Cleopatra's story wasn't just about a foreign queen who swayed Roman men. It was also about a woman who knew how to use the power of mixing cultures to stay alive in a dangerous world. Cleopatra's reclaimed identity. The new discovery of Cleopatra's DNA has made us rethink everything we know about her. To Romans, she was a foreign, seductive queen who used her power to control strong men like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. This view has never changed. This version of Cleopatra has shaped history. It was shaped by the Romans, who wanted to weaken her power and make her seem like she didn't belong in the place she ruled. But the new genetic proof shows something very different. She was a queen of Macedonia and an Egyptian at heart, a link between two worlds. This new information not only changes the way people thought about Cleopatra, but it also shows her as a sign of how the Greek and Egyptian cultures came together during her rule. Authors and historians from Rome have used Cleopatra as a pawn in their own political and cultural fights for hundreds of years. By focusing on her Greek heritage, they made her look like an outsider, a manipulative foreigner, instead of a real Egyptian ruler. This picture of Cleopatra, which became famous through books, art, and movies, will always be a part of how people think about her. But the new DNA results, which show that her mother was Egyptian, totally disprove this story. Cleopatra was more than just a princess from Macedonia trying to keep power in Egypt. She had a close relationship with the people she ruled. Not only did she conquer other countries, but she also mixed Greek and Egyptian cultures, allowing them to live together for hundreds of years through marriage, diplomacy, and political strategy. This discovery also changes how we think about race and identity in a wider sense, especially when it comes to historical figures whose backgrounds have been changed or manipulated. For many years, Cleopatra's identity was tied to her Greek background, which the Romans used against her to make her look like a threat from another country. The idea that Greek and Egyptian bloodlines were clearly different and that race was pure has shaped how we think about the old world for a long time. These ideas have been called into question by new research, which suggests that Cleopatra wasn't defined by a single racial or cultural identity, but by the complicated linked histories of her time. In a time when identity politics and racial narratives are very controversial, Cleopatra's story is a powerful reminder that people in history, like countries, often have complex, multi-layered identities. The genetic proof changes more than just how we think about Cleopatra. It makes us think about Egypt's cultural and racial history as a whole. Egypt has been seen as a land of contradictions for hundreds of years. Its culture was built by Africans, but it has been seen through the lens of Western history, which has focused on its ties to the Mediterranean. Researchers have found that Cleopatra's maternal line connects her to native Egyptian ancestry. This supports the idea that Egypt's past is not just made up of invaders and conquerors from other countries, but also of a rich native culture that created the world's most famous civilization. Cleopatra, who was both Greek and Egyptian, is a great example of how Egypt's past was marked by a constant mixing of cultures. Now that this part of Cleopatra's story is over, it's clear that her impact is much more complicated than anyone thought. The DNA results have changed our understanding of her as a ruler who stood at the meeting point of two powerful civilizations. This has created a new story that shows how deep and rich Egypt's cultural past is. As historians and experts continue to study the past, Cleopatra's new identity shows us that the truth is often more complicated than the stories we make up. With the help of science, the story of Cleopatra challenges long-held ideas about her and encourages us to look at history in a way that is more true and includes everyone. But with this revelation, we must ask, how do these findings challenge not only Cleopatra's legacy, but our understanding of the complex racial and cultural identity of the land she ruled? Let's find out how her true Egyptian heritage reshapes the history of Egypt itself. Cleopatra revealed recent scientific discoveries about Cleopatra's true heritage have changed her memory in a big way. Now she is seen not only as a Romanized figure or a symbol of foreign conquest, but also as a woman who represents a complex fusion of Greek and Egyptian cultures. People today don't just think of Cleopatra in terms of her ties with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony or her final defeat at the hands of Rome. Instead, she is now seen as a queen who had a strong connection to the land she ruled, combining Macedonian royal practices with Egyptian ones. This new way of looking at Cleopatra makes her a cultural bridge, emphasizing her role as a ruler who brought people from different worlds together. Archaeogenetics is a new field that is growing quickly. It has changed the way we think about historical people like Cleopatra. By looking at the bodies of important people in history through DNA research, scientists can now fix mistakes that have been made for a long time. With this new technology, scholars can get the real stories about royal families, cultures, and rulers from the past. This used to be hard to do with old records and Roman propaganda. With archaeogenetics, we can get a more accurate and complete picture of the past. It helps us show historical figures more correctly and uncovers parts of their identities that were thought to have been lost. By looking at Cleopatra's DNA, we can learn more about her family tree and how she ruled. This proves she wasn't just a tourist in Egypt, she was a ruler whose traditions and history are deeply rooted in the country she controlled. Cleopatra left a lasting impression because she could represent both Egypt and Macedonia. She was no longer just a leader of conquering because of this. Her life and work show that history is more complicated and linked than we think. It calls into question the idea that identity is a single, easy thing. Cleopatra's true legacy is now revealed, reshaping history forever. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video popping up on your screen to continue discovering.